Good morning, good afternoon. It's the Small Business Support Group podcast network bank holiday special. Remember bank holiday special? They used to have a TV show, didn't they? We have to say good morning to Grant and also good morning to Mark. We're all here. Well, no, Maz is off. She's out walking, she said, I think. Did she say she's gone out for a walk?
I think she said she's gone out for a walk, yeah. It is Bank Holiday Monday here in the UK, isn't it? So,
yes, of course.
You know, we'll let her off this once.
Yeah, we'll do that. It's do they have bank holidays throughout the world, or is it just our country?
I think
not the same one.
They're not consistent.
What do they call it?
I don't know. I don't think they do actually. I don't think they do. It's just us.
It's just us.
We're just doing our watch parties. So there we go.
Sorry.
We're all
all doing that.
Three blokes can't multitask.
I suppose I could bring it closer. Unfortunately, because I've got the tech desk.
You've got the.
I've got it's all plugged in the side. Yeah, that's it. I'm just doing that. So
what you got? What you got against that?
A tech desk.
Yeah, I saw that. It's very impressive. So basically, do you want to explain what a tech desk is?
Well, a tech desk allows me to set. First of all, it's simple. Set the height of the desk to normal work mode, which will be down. We are now. It's going down now. So that's normal work level. There we go.
We want lower.
So it's just me, just lower half of me, and then this is what we class as the video series. Come on again, go away, Siri. Then that's our broadcast level for video. Now I'm going to have to move the mic out.
This is great for the podcast, by the way, Matt. Because the podcast has got no idea what's going on.
Have I lost the order?
No. I just said it's great for the podcast. For those of you listening and not watching, Matt's head is going up and down as his automatic desk.
Why have you lost audio? Am I back?
Yeah, you're all right, Matt.
My audio's gone. That is mad.
Yeah,
he thinks his audio's gone, but it hasn't.
That's the best position.
Am I back now?
Matt, you never went, mate. You just kept saying, I've lost my audio, and you hadn't.
No, I couldn't hear. That was the thing. So I'm now on that's considered. There's also a blue light behind it, and that's why I've got a blue haze.
Yeah, it's a good look.
We'll just go back down to that level, and it's got all USB ports in there and everything on the side, and it's just lovely.
It's very sexy. Where'd you get that from, Matt?
Costco.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
Yep. Did you use your bounce back loan for that?
No, you see, Grant said that. I haven't had my loan. I haven't had one yet. So that's,
that's going on the new car.
Yeah, I've had to spend that on the Evoque. It's a nice bit of kit. It's really good. You see straight away, Maz is not here. We're talking tech straight away. But it's really useful for all the USB ports on the side, so it's cracking. It's really good, and I can stand up and work, which is, I think, sometimes is really useful because it just. I think you forget how long you sit down for.
Yeah, they are good. We've got them all in the office if ever we go back, and they are good.
Do you have to keep your finger on it to go up and down there?
You do, I'm afraid. Yeah, yours is obviously much more sophisticated.
And does it have a blue light underneath?
No, Matt, you've trumped me again, mate. Yeah.
I'm not sure what the blue light's for.
It's like listening to boys and their toys, isn't it?
So anyway, Grant, what are you talking about today?
I want to talk about something that may be a little bit controversial and maybe a little bit insensitive, but in a broader sense, it's about blame culture.
Fair enough. Okay, we'll come back to that in a moment. Mark, what have you got to talk about?
I'm going to talk about the retails, non-essential retail shops opening on 1st of June, and what clarity is given or not given at the moment for them to do that.
Okay, that's excellent. I'm going to talk about the risk factor and how we move forward by evaluating our risk of going out and doing different things. So, Grant, do you want to kick things off with your...
Yes.
bit of dodgy stuff. Well, no, it's not dodgy. It's
Well,
all
no, I think since it's Bank Holiday Monday, I wanted to
keep it light.
sort of, yeah. Perhaps I thought perhaps it's not a bad day to not talk completely about the business element of the show, and just some of the things that are frustrating me somewhat. And I'll tell you why they're frustrating me a bit. Since we've come out of full lockdown, I've had the opportunity to, using social distancing rules, have a catch up with a couple of mates by going for a walk. We went for a nice long walk yesterday, and I went for one on Thursday as well with another mate. And I think when you get into that social situation that is somewhat similar to what we used to, you do tend to find that you talk a lot more broadly than we do when we're doing all a telephone or a YouTube, or a Zoom catch up. Certainly I found that to be the case. And so as a result, I've ended up talking to a few mates a little bit more broadly about what we've been going through in terms of the whole lockdown and the wheres and why-fors. And like I say, this isn't particularly business related, although I have got a kind of a spin on it. Now, the one thing that's really been bothering me ever since I started paying attention to the news, which I now do a lot more than I used to, purely so I can just stay topical with the conversation on this show every day. So I do listen to a little bit of news in the morning, and I mainly try and pick up on what's going on in with the COVID situation, and obviously in its relation to how it affects us in the economy, etc. Now, one of the things that bothered me right from the start when I first started hearing about it, and this was back in April, was the fact that since we went into lockdown, our hospitals have been much quieter than they normally are, to the extent that and I checked this out this morning. I did a bit of research this morning. There's a couple of articles. One is the Guardian, the other one's the Telegraph, and then there's several. There's one that I looked up that's the World Economic Forum, and a few others. And this seems to be typical around the world, that we have got in the region of in a lot of departments within hospitals, as little as 25% of the amount of people having operations, emergency treatment, and everything else that would normally go on in the hospitals. So bringing that back to the UK, here's my concern. So we went into lockdown, and straight away people were full of fear, and they didn't want to go to hospital. They weren't allowed to go to the doctors, but they didn't want to go to hospital for fear of catching COVID-19. Now, there are, prior to lockdown, the reports prior to COVID-19, in fact, last year, there was loads of stuff in the news about people in corridors of hospitals. The NHS is under massive stress. There's people dying in the corridors. They can't keep up with the demand, and the whole system is very close to failure. It was in the news constantly. Nurses were under stress, and doctors were having all sorts of problems. And this was, a pretty much a newsworthy item most weeks. And yet, then when we go into lockdown, all of a sudden, all of the people that were in corridors dying, having life-saving operations, going in for checkups for cancer treatment, sepsis, heart attacks, all of these kind of things, all of a sudden, the majority of them have stopped. Now, what I'm confused about, and I'd love to know some more specific facts, is what has happened to all those people that were supposed to be having life-saving treatment at the NHS that was under stress, and what percentage of the deaths that we've been attributed to, and we have seen a spike in deaths, but looking at the Office of National Statistics, we've had roughly double the deaths on a weekly basis for the last month that we would normally have had. It's obviously starting to come down now, but during the peak, I still might add that in the peak week, 10th of April, it wasn't as many as we had in the peak week of year 2000, when there was more deaths due to the flu virus, I believe. So surely a percentage of the deaths that were are being attributed to the fact that we've got COVID-19, it makes common sense that a good chunk of those deaths must surely be attributed to the fact that our hospitals aren't treating them. Now, I'd like to debate this with somebody, or somebody give me some information that might perhaps be able to disprove that theory, which seems logical to me. But it brings me back round to this. I'm not particularly a conspiracy theorist. I find conspiracy theories very interesting, but my usual sort of take on them is that when you dig down a lot deeper, there's usually some more usual sort of reasonable reasons for why, conspiracy theories come about. Now, and there's lots of conspiracy theories relating to the stats that are plain for everybody to see, that we've got all these deaths, but also we've got hospitals that are empty. And that's a fact because I've looked it up on multiple different platforms and news feeds. And I've seen doctors on the telly as well on the TV saying, normally this department is full of people that need emergency help, and A&E is empty. The cancer wards are not getting treated. The people aren't getting treated, and sepsis is another big killer. People are dying at home of heart attacks because they don't want to come into hospital for fear of catching COVID-19. So all of those are kind of facts that I think I can be fairly reassured and qualified from multiple sources that is happening. But what percentage of the additional deaths is due to that? And does that then make the threat of COVID-19 even less? And the question I would like to ask is, has lockdown caused more deaths than COVID-19? Because I suspect that if the answer to that was yes, because of the culture that we live in, the blame culture that we live in, that they would cover that up, the politicians, because we do live in a culture where people are so quick to attribute blame and want justice, and they're not willing to accept people's mistakes. And the politicians, who obviously are the ones that get the fingers pointed at them a lot, are the ones that are accountable to this, are the ones that end up dodging round it and covering things up, a lot like what's gone on in the news this morning with the guy who was, what's his name, the one who was running around the country during lockdown, being completely hypocritical, and now Boris is trying to back him up. I read a book a couple of years ago now called Black Box Thinking. And for you entrepreneurs listening to this, I urge you to read it. In fact, anybody would find this book very, very interesting. And it was written by a guy whose wife died on the operating table. I can't remember what operation she had, but it was a fairly benign operation. It wasn't one that was, necessarily life-threatening, and it came as a real shock to him, obviously, when she died. And the bigger shock was that when he tried to investigate what went on, he found that the blame was being swapped around and covered up and really sort of avoided because of the blame culture within the NHS. And he compares that to the way that the aeronautical industry manage their blame culture. And what happens if a pilot makes an error? They've got a period of time, I think it's a week, to own up to it, to have it investigated, and there is absolutely no repercussions for their error. And because of that, the aeronautical industry is the safest industry, and flight is so safe because people are fine about owning up to their mistakes. And the people that are on the flight deck that are seeing things happen, they get the opportunity to examine it. And obviously you've got the black box as well, which is where it comes from. The black box is the thing that records everything that goes on in the aeroplane in the event of a disaster. But the most important thing is that there is no blame attributed as long as everybody is transparent within a period of time, because nobody's going to crash an airplane on purpose, but people do make mistakes. And it came about because there was a flight that happened in the 70s, I believe it was, where an aeroplane crashed because it ran out of fuel because the pilot was distracted trying to figure out whether the landing gear had come down or not, which in actual fact it had. And he was circling around, and the first officer and the other people on the flight deck could see that they were running out of fuel. But because the captain was in charge and they didn't want to override him, they were too scared to override him to point out that they were running out of fuel, and the plane crashed and took out a load of houses when it crashed as well.
Oh,
and it could have been avoided if this kind of hierarchical blame culture wasn't in place. And his argument was, if they applied that black box thinking to the health industry, we would advance so much quicker because people wouldn't be trying to cover up what's going on. Now, I have got a suspicion that that is what is going on with COVID-19. I am pretty well, from the evidence that I can see, and I'd love somebody else to be able to give me some stats, because I'm by no means an expert. It appears to me that there must be a decent percentage of deaths, additional deaths going on as a result of lockdown. It just makes sense, but nobody's talking about it, and I wonder whether it's because of the blame culture.
So, are you saying that? I mean, I didn't realise that regarding the industry, the plane industry. I didn't realise that. It's a great way of actually dealing with problems, isn't it? It's awesome. It is a fantastic way. But if it was being dealt with that way in the NHS, should it be interpreted that way? Is that a good or a bad thing? I'm not sure. I mean, if they are, then they are saying there is more deaths. This is what's happening. Or would you prefer it to be hidden? I'm not sure.
Well, there are definitely, there's the facts are the hospitals are pretty much, emptier than they've ever been. Yeah. So people aren't getting treated. Now, we know that last year people were dying in the corridors. There was all sorts of, uproar about it, and that the NHS was falling apart. It was stressed. We can't cope. We know that to be the case. So it's a logical conclusion to say that the people that now aren't getting treated in the hospitals must be dying at home. They must be.
There's no data on it, is there?
There is. I mean,
why not? Is what?
Yeah, I know. I know the question you're asking. Go on, Mark.
I can only speak of a couple of friends of ours who are nurses or doctors who work in the medical field, and they're talking about not the second peak, but the third peak. This whole situation where you're going to have masses of cases coming through, nothing to do with coronavirus, but because people haven't been going, they've been trying to shield themselves, save the NHS, and you've got to ask yourself the question, Grant, in this one. We say, we should get away with a blame culture. We should not hold the government accountable or be pointing fingers. But look at Dominic Cummings here. And whether you like it or not, what his decision was. The reason he's been kept his role is because he's a high flying advisor, and the whole government is supported with his strategy with Brexit and all the rest of it, and this current strategy, and that's the only reason he's currently in the job. So what my point is if you can't point the finger at people like this who have paid a lot of money to come up with advice for the government, and politicians who are given the opportunity to be elected in their role, and bear in mind I was a local councillor for a while, so I have a little insight how they work, in as much as they're all looking to cover their own arse. And obviously that wouldn't be acceptable under the rules, would it? With swearing with LinkedIn, but what my point is,
you're all right with arse, I think.
Okay. We have to have accountability, and the fact is, because what you rightly say, Grant, is all these figures aren't truly being reflective, and we're being told that lockdown is the answer. People are still dying, and whether they're dying of COVID-19, we've said this on day one, or whether they're dying of other causes, everything is being labelled as COVID-19, and that is a problem right now. Now, I've just had a quick skirt because I was thinking, Cummings, what was his first name, all the rest of it. I thought, I'll type in the news on broadband, on the tablet, and it's come up with the BBC News in the last, I don't know, where are we? The last 49 minutes. Coronavirus. Cummings row raises fears over the future of lockdown. So is Boris losing his grip on the lockdown in general for making these decisions?
Well, it sort of gels in what I want to say as well, because of the death rate, not the dominant Cummings. You sort of skewed it there because I was gonna jump in regarding the death rate, because I think as we move forward, I think you've got to take it amongst yourselves, because obviously we've got the Johnson's announcement, which will be Thursday, because it's 3 weeks since the change of policy before. So there's going to be another talk on Thursday about all this. And where do we go from here, and how do we move forward? Because obviously that's this step we've just taken. Everything's sort of relaxed, and I think we've sort of got a handle on it, hopefully. But you've got to work out your risk. And so I've pulled up some data, and I've actually done some research on this. And it's the risk of dying of coronavirus versus normal annual risk. And what they've worked out over the past 10 weeks of looking at people dying of COVID and also dying natural causes as well. The average person, I'm going to read this out, so bear with me. An average person aged 40 has around 1 in 1,000 risk of not making it till their next birthday, and an almost identical risk of not surviving a coronavirus infection. That means your risk of dying is effectively doubled from what it was if you weren't infected. So if you look at it that way, as you get older, and we understand that as you get older, and there's other things underlying which can cause issues. But if we just look at the age groups, the average risk of dying of coronavirus is actually really, really low. Now, I know Grant's been banging on about this for months since we started this show, but it's actually now looking at the data, and there's a graph. Unfortunately, I couldn't get the graph off the report I was reading. But they're looking at mainly the male death rate. It is, if you're going to make it to your next birthday, coronavirus, if you're between 40 and 50, you will make it, even if you get coronavirus, because the rates are just really weird. And also when you're younger, as for a child, the risk of dying from coronavirus is, as we know, is 0, and they've said that. But cancer and accidents are the biggest cause of fatalities in small children as well. I know it's a very dark subject, but Grant did lead this subject off this morning, so I think we'll just go with it anyway. So I think hopefully on Thursday, Johnson will come out, and we're going to go into the retail in a second remark. But he'll say obviously the retail shops are opening on the 1st, but people have just got to understand now that if you're going to go outside, if you just treat it normally, keep your 2 meter distancing, there's a fair chance you're just going to survive this naturally, normally anyway, and you'll get through it. Yes, you still could die by your next birthday, but that could be something else, not of coronavirus. So this is the first bit of data, and it is from the BBC. It's the first bit of data that's actually proved to me to say, you know what, if you're sensible and don't mess about, and it says something else, then you're going to survive this, and we're all going to survive it and get through it. But as you get to that older, over the 60s and the 70s, yes, you're going to get it. And it's what we've all been said, but there's been no graph. I mean, the graph is here. That's what the graph looks like. I can't get it up on there for some reason though. So I think it's quite safe.
I think there's some other things to take into account there as well, Matt, because they're very generic. I mean, if you just take the normal chances of dying, if you're 40, making it to your next, the variables within that are going to be, where you live, your diet, your job, how healthy you are, how much exercise you do. All of these kind of things come into that. And also the same applies to COVID-19. Have you got any underlying health issues? Do you have, diabetes is a big, thing. Have you got any, also your ethnicity plays a part in those statistics. Now, each one of those things taken into account, if you're a fit, healthy person, regardless of how old you are, with a strong immune system, it's even less of a threat, let alone if you're young. If you're young as well, it's virtually 0, and what this means is that the fear that has been, put into us. For me, this comes back down to what Mark was saying. So in answer to Mark's question, Mark, you were saying, somebody needs to be found accountable. Okay. My belief is that the reason we keep having these politicians trip up and end up finding them so fallible is because of the system of blame that we're in. So in other words, when Dominic Cummings went and made that trip, at that time, he made a decision. He made a choice to do that. His motives may or may not have been appropriate. He may have been hypocritical. But because he knew that if somebody found out about it, they'd be all over him like a rash, he didn't own up to it. Yeah. And it's because of the blame culture that our politicians end up being deceitful, because they know that everything gets twisted, blown out of proportion. Whereas if you'd be in the culture where if you make a mistake and you make a cock up, you own up to it and you get sort of forgiven because we learn from it and then we grow. That's what happens in the aviation industry. And that would stop the need for people to having to lie as much. And that's the double-edged sword that politicians have to work with is, if they do anything that they may regret soon after, or they make a decision that turns out to be inappropriate or the wrong decision, because of the blame culture, because people can't wait to point the finger and vilify them and turn them into, monsters and sack them, they end up covering it up because of the fear of that. I think, and that for me is an absolute, it's just ridiculous, because let's face it, what Dominic Cummings did, he did it for fear of his family. We can all relate to why he did it, and what he did, and he made a choice, and who suffered as a result. But because he covered it up, that's the problem. It's not what he did; it's the fact that he covered it up.
Yeah,
that for me is the issue. Because if you admit to your mistakes, and this brings it back around to what I wanted to finish off with, really, in business, I've always said in my businesses that a blame culture hinders your growth. If people in your business, people that work for you, are scared of letting people know that they've made a mistake and try and cover it up, it just causes so more problems. And in business, if you make a mistake, and I say this to clients as well, if we make a cock up and you own up to it straight away and you do everything you can to put it right, you can make things better than if the mistake had never happened in the first place, because people can see how much you care. You made an honest mistake and you fix it. But if you make a mistake and try and cover it up and lie about it, then you just make that is the worst thing that can happen. The absolute worst thing can happen. Unfortunately, with politicians, this is what we see. And now we've got Boris and Dominic trying to squirm their way out of this, when really they should just go, sorry, we made a mistake there. Do you know what? He shouldn't have done it. But he took a decision at the time. It may not have been the right decision. I'm really sorry. Won't happen again. That's what should be happening. Because it's obvious to everybody that what he did was inappropriate. And yet Boris has got to stand up there and try and, because he can't, he knows that it's probably more detrimental to the country to sack him, because he's been involved in all the meetings. He's fundamental in everything that goes on.
He is the government. Dominic Cummings is the government.
Yeah. So if you sack him, everybody's screwed. But they can't, because of the blame culture, they can't just go, sorry. Do you know what I mean? It's just ridiculous.
It is. Well, we'll see what happens over the next few days. Obviously, as I said, this thing on Thursday where Johnson's going to make his speech, and we'll see if Johnson's going to say anything between now and then. But let's move on to the retail shops. And on the 1st of June, hopefully most of the retail shops will be opening. And Mark just wants a few words about this. Go ahead, Mark.
I mean, look, I'm doing an interview with one of the prominent general managers for Touchwood, talking about this. He's written a great article within the Birmingham Chamber of Commerce, just saying that there isn't enough information and guidance coming from the government as to what non-essential retail shops need to do to open their stores. And in the same way as businesses, there isn't this clarity that is needed. But what we've always said from day one is, and Grant mentioned this earlier, there is a health and safety policy out there. And, you know, these health and safety policies have been there for a long time. We've seen stuff coming through as best as we can with coronavirus, what we should be doing, what we shouldn't be doing. And I feel that we can learn from the shops that have been open for a while, the supermarkets, from day one when it was manic. It was like, yeah, everyone grabbing what they could, to where it is now, where the shelves are stocked up, they're fully manageable, and they're controlling the flow of people. And I think this is what will happen on the 1st of June. And I also feel it's a great opportunity to get the economy going again, get Britain moving again. This is what it should be about. I understand completely the fear that people have about the coronavirus and about catching it, but they're doing more tests. Let's, as Grant says, let's not point to what the failures are. Let's look at the successes. The government are doing more testing, more tracing. People are being advised, and you've got to use your own vigil in what you should be doing yourself. Wearing a mask if you think it's appropriate, or not wearing a mask. The guidelines are loose. Yes, we get that. But at the same time, for the economy to move forward, we do need to start seeing retail shops open again on the 1st. And a lot of, I was reading up around this, a lot of big centres are going to be leaving to localised managers to say what they need to do and what they shouldn't do. But surely this is, and we've just come out of Mental Health Week awareness, surely this is therapeutic to everyone right now who is suffering through the whole lockdown situation, being kept up in their homes, not being able to get out as often as they have been until recently, that the next phase forward, the moving forward, the whole getting back to normal is the shops opening again. You know, I took a photo of that and I sent it across to you that our barbers, my barbers, and which is great to see this open eventually, every one of them have taken a COVID certificate. I don't know what that means, what it looks like, but they've taken a certificate training to say they are COVID trained to cut your hair. This is what the norm will be. We know this now. And I feel that, you know, the retail shops opening again on the 1st of June will show some sign of normality and something that we all need right now when we're looking for the future and to come out of lockdown.
Yeah, I think you're right there. The retail therapy side of things is really important. It just worries me how, you know, that the across all the shops, as you know, I haven't been out very often, but across the shops that I've been in, so that would be Tesco's, it would have been Costco's, it would have been Sainsbury's. There's such varying levels of how they're dealing with the queuing system, how many people they're letting in. It needs, I think, you know, no, we don't want to keep saying the government needs to lead the way, because it needs to be common sense. So I don't think Sainsbury's are doing a great job at all, but it's Tesco's is amazing, and I've said it before. Tesco's is astonishing how they're running it. But the smaller shops, I'm worried about how the smaller shops are going to do it.
You're trying to get Tesco to sponsor the show, Matt?
I'm trying to get them as a sponsor.
Every little helps.
Every little helps. No, but it makes you feel safer. They've got a great one-way system. It all works beautifully. You know. So someone sat down and worked that out. You know. So the smaller stores.
Yeah, the point is here. There is a process, a system already in place. Every small business, every small retail can follow this. It is not a huge expense to go out and put a bit of tape on the floor and put a poster in your window and say, look, this how many people, like the local farm shop for us is saying 5 people in store at any one time. Yeah, you need to be looking at your social distancing when coming in. There is an element of people taking that and using it, and then there's 1 or 2 who just flout the rules, will skip it out in front of you, will, like a bit like you're on the motorway, cut you up. You know, we know it's going to happen. You know, and it is down to, dare I say it, a blame culture, but it is down to all of us saying, no, it's not right. Let's keep within the rules and we'll all be safe.
Well, you know what they say about the British in the rest of the world, especially America, that we do like a good queue. You know, we do like queuing. And I think over the summer period and into the autumn, I think we're going to love it, because there's going to be loads of queues outside them shops. And I think British people are just awesome at queuing. I think they're great because you go anywhere else in the world and people are cutting in, but here in this country we make a good queue.
That is demonstrated today, Matt. When I went to the park this morning, Sears Retail Park, B&Q is now living up to its name.
Oh, a queue.
It's all round the car park,
all across the car park, and everybody's loving it. They're on the phones, they're in the queue.
Thank God it's me, and you're doing your DIY. I love it, and that's what it should be about. That sense of being is sending a message that, you know, we are getting back to normality of some shape or form. We all know it's not going to be exactly how it used to be. It's not going to be like this for a long time. The NHS, going back onto that grant, has said, you know, operations, all of the backlog, it's going to take years to catch up on this. So, you know, it just makes you think twice about all of it. But we have to start moving forward and not looking backwards.
No, that is. And that is our time done for today. So thank you very much, gentlemen. Just a few bits and pieces we just want to talk about. We have, as we mentioned on Friday, we're going to move the show forward. I'll talk about this just briefly. We had contact with LinkedIn over the weekend, who dropped me an email, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that this show will be actually forming part of the new LinkedIn Live broadcast that they're going to do. We have to dress up and wear shirts and ties and stuff and everything like that. So so that could be happening in the future over the next few weeks. We're also going to be looking for sponsors for the show on a monthly basis. So I'm going to put my email up. Anybody interested in sponsoring the show on a monthly basis, let me know. And that will include, obviously, your logo everywhere across the show, across multiple platforms. We've also got podcasts running as well, which is going very well. iTunes and Spotify will be starting this week, I've been told. So it's all going on. It's all very exciting. And I must say thanks to everybody who joins us and watches us every single day. We get a great audience, a few hundred every day. And for a little show which just talks about a bit of business and then a little bit of nonsense, it's I'm quite proud of it. So drop me an email if you're thinking about, if you're looking for any sponsorship on our show or any other questions you need to ask us. Mark, thank you very much. Grant, thank you very much. It's Bank Holiday weekend, everybody. Go and enjoy the sunshine. And we'll see you tomorrow. See you then. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.